Can't you think before you act? Is that why people call you thoughtless and useless? Apologize to me now, and it had better be sincere. When my husband talks to me like this, I have no choice but to comply. If I talk back, we'll end up in a big fight, and it might lead to divorce again. I learned from my last divorce that a woman must not defy her man. So in my next marriage, I thought I should be more submissive. But deep down, I knew that was wrong. I don't want to make the same mistake twice. This time, I'll find my happiness. That's what I thought. My name is Jory, and I'm a 35-year-old stay-at-home wife. After failing in my first marriage and going back to being single, I vowed not to make the same mistakes. I have been living quietly, thanks to my hard work. I met Brown, and we got married. I'm often looked down upon, but it's better than my previous marriage, which was full of fights. I just live quietly day by day. Brown is an energetic man, confident in himself, and a bit overbearing. Maybe it's because he's 2 years older than me. You're a housewife, so you should make sure I can relax at home since I'm the one earning. That's what a wife's job is, he often complains. Why did you put away the remote? Leave it where I sit. You're really useless, he often says. Or you need to work on being more attractive, even if it means faking youth. Make an effort to look younger than your age with makeup. He criticizes my appearance constantly. These were issues in my previous marriage too. Back then, I would talk back to my ex-husband, resulting in big fights. Now, my thinking has changed and I've decided to keep smiling and nodding without talking back. That's what I endure now. Marriage is all about patience. That's what I believed at the time. If I couldn't endure it, I wouldn't find happiness in this marriage. During my previous marriage, I pretended to be less intelligent than I am. My ex-husband would rely on me when he was in trouble but would say, "Smart women just aren't that charming." I think that was one of the reasons our marriage was so unhappy. So now, I pretend to be a graduate of a less prestigious university and avoid making any insightful comments. Thanks to that, Brown has started to say, "Jory really is a naive person. That's what makes her cute, and he seems happy with me." To be loved as a woman, I've learned that intelligence isn't necessary. I had resolved to agree with everything Brown said without question, but then something happened that shattered my stereotypes. It happened at a family gathering where my mother-in-law's insistence led me to prepare and serve food and drinks for all the relatives by myself. After some thought, I realized that by cutting down on unnecessary steps and movements, I could manage everything on my own. While dishes simmered on the stove, I served ready-to-eat items and managed drinks on all 3 burners simultaneously. Just as I was finishing up, Brown's sister Kylie approached with concern in her eyes. "Jory, Mom says she's sorry. Are you okay? Can I help?" she asked. "I'm almost done, so it's okay," I replied, feeling surprised by her offer. "Almost done? Have you worked in the culinary industry or something?" Kylie wondered aloud. I worked diligently, and before I knew it, everything was ready. Reflecting on it, I realized pretending to be foolish wasn't as simple as it seemed. Despite my act, deep down, I had been imitating someone who once struggled with poor test scores in school. But bad test scores didn't equate to lack of intelligence. Eventually, the facade of pretending to be ignorant and suppressing my intelligence would lead to mistakes. I've been telling myself I'm stupid, just to be the kind of wife Brown approves of. I confided to myself. However, Kylie saw through my act. Despite being 6 years younger, she spoke to me with more maturity than Brown ever did. Kind words comforted me. "Jory, don't push yourself. It's okay to admit when you're struggling. My brother doesn't always understand other people's feelings, so I know it can be tough. Please rely on me during family gatherings. You don't have to do everything yourself," Kylie reassured me. Her words brought tears to my eyes. Pretending to be someone I'm not had been painful, and realizing that I felt compelled to act foolish just to be loved was heartbreaking. "Thank you," I whispered, grateful for Kylie's understanding and support. I expressed my gratitude to Kylie repeatedly and asked for her help in carrying the food. Since then, Kylie and I have been chatting on social media and occasionally going out together. My in-laws are unconventional, with my father-in-law working overseas and leaving my mother-in-law to manage the household alone. This independence means that when my mother-in-law becomes unreasonable, there's no one to intervene. Having Kylie on my side was a relief, but her support exceeded my expectations. At the next family gathering, when my mother-in-law tried to criticize me, Kylie intervened. "Mom, A son's wife is someone else's precious daughter. If I were to get married, would you treat me the same way you treat Jory? She defended me. Initially taken aback, my mother-in-law replied, but Jory is a divorced person, right? People who get divorced must have some character flaws. If I don't educate her properly, Brown won't be happy. She's not smart and lacks skill, so I have to be strict. Kylie calmly challenged her. Have you ever asked her why she got divorced? I don't know about that. Well, then you really need to see for yourself what kind of person Jory is. I know Jory is a good person, kind and very warm-hearted, but I'm worried because she sometimes neglects herself. Don't you see that? Mother-in-law listened attentively as Kylie spoke with sincerity. After a moment of thought, she turned serious. Brown told me that you're struggling in your marriage because you're not very bright. But just like this kid says, even when I've given you impossible tasks at family gatherings, you've managed them effortlessly. If you were really dumb or inept, you wouldn't have been able to do them. See? Kylie exclaimed triumphantly. Mother-in-law apologized to me. I have only been listening to Brown's opinion, thinking it was right. Jory, I'm truly sorry for my rudeness until now. It's all right, I replied, accepting her repeated apologies. Honestly, being tasked with all the cooking had never made me feel uncomfortable. I had never even considered it harassment, but I found myself slightly hopeful that my relationship with my mother-in-law might improve. However, after that incident, she became tough on Brown. Stop complaining about Jory and start making an effort to be a good husband that matches her, she admonished him. Initially crestfallen, Brown's pride seemed wounded. When he returned home, he glared at me and yelled, "What did you tell Mom? Really, having a dumb wife is such a pain." I didn't say anything. Even if your mother says something, just be yourself. I told her that you've always treated me well at family gatherings, I replied, bewildered. This response only seemed to enrage Brown further. Ha! Are you saying you lied to me? So, you don't really like me? No, I'm always grateful to you. Thanks to you, I can live even without much education and not being very bright, I pleaded. Brown smirked with a chilling smile. Oh, really? Then you'll do whatever I say, right? Yes, I'll do anything, I replied hesitantly. Good, because you messed up and I got yelled at by Mom. You'll get no allowance as punishment. I've been giving you $100 a month, but now it'll be $0. If you want it back, just think about pleasing me every day, Brown declared before retreating to the bedroom alone. I felt disheartened, wondering if this marriage was a mistake. As someone inclined to logical thinking, I tried to understand what went wrong and how to improve. But I couldn't quite comprehend why Brown was so angry. If his mother scolded him, it was his fault, not mine. Regardless, losing the allowance didn't trouble me much since I had nearly $10,000 saved up from before our marriage. I didn't want to cater to Brown's demands, so I continued living as I always had. However, suddenly, and for some unknown reason, Brown grabbed my arm forcefully, made me sit on the floor, and said, "Can't you use your head more? This is why people call you thoughtless and useless." Apologized to me deeply. Confused and humiliated by the situation, I didn't understand why Brown was so angry, but I apologized, saying, "I'm sorry. I'm not bright enough to understand why you're angry, Brown. You're really the worst incompetent woman. Don't sleep sitting like this all night. Figure out why I'm angry by morning," Brown scolded. He then brought his phone charger into the living room, started charging his mobile phone, and positioned it so the back faced me. I heard a click sound. "I'm recording you to make sure you don't move or sleep. You don't have a job since you're a stay-at-home wife, so staying up all night won't be an issue, right? But don't slack off on tomorrow's chores or I won't forgive you," Brown threatened before retreating to the bedroom alone. I was a mess of disappointment, disbelief, and anger toward Brown. Regret surged within me, wondering why I had married such a man. I recalled a similar incident from my previous marriage, where my ex-husband also seemed to want to control me and demanded my obedience at all costs. With this realization, the reasons behind both my failed marriages, both the previous one and now with Brown, became clear to me. I felt a surge of anger toward my past self for not reaching this conclusion sooner. Choosing a man so similar to my last husband, wasn't I failing to learn from my previous mistakes? Once I understood this, the only feeling left in me was a resolve to end this unenjoyable marriage. I stood up, took Brown's mobile phone, and stopped the recording. I transferred the video to my own mobile phone, edited it into a 2-hour clip of just me sitting still, and sent it back to Brown's phone before replacing it where I found it. Then, I lay down on the sofa and woke up at 6 o'clock in the morning to the sound of Brown moving in the bedroom. He seemed satisfied that I was still on the floor, but was shocked to find his phone screen dark and the video stopped after about 2 hours. Did you do something to the video? Brown demanded, visibly upset. I pretended ignorance, saying, "Ha! I didn't do anything. I don't really understand mobile phones." Brown appeared to calm down slightly and said, "I'm sorry about yesterday. I got angry thinking you were trying to please me. I'm smart, so I didn't notice, but you're trying in your own way, right?" He apologized with a condescending attitude. I felt irritated, but I endured it and forgave him with a smile. "Yeah, it's okay," I said, though I truly didn't care much about Brown's opinion since I was planning to divorce him soon anyway. However, I decided that I wouldn't make it easy for him. I resolved to ensure Brown received a fitting punishment. About a month later, it was time for a family gathering, and Brown and I headed to my in-law's house. I anticipated a busy day with many relatives around. As we entered, I expected to be put to work as usual. To my surprise, mother-in-law and Kylie were busy cooking, and I was told to sit down and do nothing. I hadn't interacted much with the relatives before, but Brown struck up a conversation with the man in front of him, and I joined in. It turned out the man was Brown's uncle, and something about him felt familiar to me. Brown began explaining, "My uncle teaches at Harvard. You might not understand, Jory, but he's doing some impressive work in the field of chemistry." The uncle looked at me and exclaimed, "Brown, what are you talking about? There's no way Jory wouldn't understand that." His words left me even more puzzled. "What are you talking about, uncle? Jory graduated from a lower-tier university and can't even operate a mobile phone properly. She's not bright at all," Brown insisted. Despite Brown's comments, the uncle smiled kindly at me and said, "You're really quite excellent, aren't you? Why pretend to be foolish? Brown is the one who's actually at a much lower level. Doesn't it feel bad to be looked down upon by someone like that? You should just be yourself." The uncle's loud voice caught the attention of other family members, including mother-in-law and Kylie, who turned to look at us. "Well, I guess you're right," the uncle concluded, casting a meaningful glance at Brown. I was growing weary of being constantly ridiculed. Shall I tell the truth? I thought to myself. Actually, I graduated from Cambridge University. After that, I attended graduate school in America. As I revealed this, Brown's face registered shock. "Well, what? You can't be. I think my IQ is around 150 or so, but that doesn't mean I'm smart. I seem to end up marrying people like Brown. After all," I chuckled. Kylie spoke up unexpectedly. "Jory, could it be that your previous divorce happened because you were too smart for your husband to keep up with?" I had never discussed the reasons for my divorce, but it seemed Kylie had pieced it together. "Well, yes, that's right," I admitted. "My ex-husband said I was unattractive because I was intelligent. He believed women should be quiet, do housework, and only serve their husbands. I logically refuted him every time, and he eventually said he didn't want to be with me anymore. That's why I've been pretending to be foolish in my current marriage." As I explained, Uncle nodded knowingly. "I knew it. You were at Harvard's graduate school for a while after Cambridge, weren't you? I thought I recognized you. I never forget a face, though I'm not good with names. Besides, you were famous at the university for being both smart and beautiful." I was surprised by Uncle's recognition. "I was there for only about a year before moving to another graduate school," I clarified. "Now that you mention it, I did feel like I had seen Uncle somewhere before," I added, recalling the familiarity. Uncle laughed proudly. "Indeed, it was you? I thought you looked familiar." While Uncle chuckled, Brown's face turned pale and uneasy. Seeing this as an opportunity, I said, "By the way, there's something I want to show everyone." I took out my mobile phone and played a video. It showed me sitting on the floor while Brown instructed me to stay up all night. Brown's voice was clear on the recording. Brown jumped up in protest. "This is fabricated. You did this to frame me. The fact that you only filmed for 2 hours proves it was your fault." As he shouted, he grabbed my collar, but the men around us quickly restrained him. And then, mother-in-law spoke up, saying, "I don't want to dine with such a despicable man. Please throw him out." With that, Brown was escorted out of the house. At the entrance, mother-in-law admonished him as he crouched. "I didn't realize you were this foolish." "I was foolish as well. I'll contact you later about what to do next. Go home and behave yourself." She slammed the door and locked it firmly. Then mother-in-law bowed her head to me, tearfully apologizing. "I'm so sorry about Brown. I had no idea he did such a terrible thing." I once believed what Brown said. Kylie and I supported mother-in-law, comforting her as she cried. "Mother-in-law isn't to blame," I reassured her gently, repeating it until she finally recovered and put on a smile. "The food's getting cold. Let's eat together," mother-in-law suggested, and we all returned to the living room. Later, I engaged in conversations with Uncle about his university research and enjoyed chatting with other family members. Eventually, I proceeded with the divorce from Brown. It went smoothly, including the division of property. When I showed Brown the passbook with $10,000 in savings I had before marriage, his face contorted in frustration. "I should have been kinder. Even though I thought you were not smart, I'm sorry. You won't forgive me anymore, will you?" he regretted, apologizing too late. Despite his words, I ended my relationship with Brown decisively. Subsequently, Brown was disowned by mother-in-law and cut off by Kylie. He sought help from relatives, but none paid him attention, leaving him to live a lonely life. Since then, I've found a job and am working hard. I've come to realize that a woman's happiness doesn't solely depend on marriage. I can live happily without it, focusing on what I want to do. This is when I can truly be myself. Although I divorced Brown, I've built a strong relationship with Kylie. Moving forward, I intend to cherish being true to myself, occasionally meeting and enjoying time with those I wish to get along with.